Hello, I'm Natalie MacDonald. It's been a bad week turned worse for France. Earlier this week, credit ratings agency Moody's stripped France of its AAA rating, commenting that it would downgrade its creditworthiness further if the socialist government fails to implement announced reforms. And today it has emerged that Standard & Poor's, which stripped France of its top credit rating in January, has commented there's at least a 1 in 3 chance the country will be lowered again next year. On the phone now is Natascha Gewaltig of Action Economics in London. Natascha, the French bonds market have remained largely unchanged in its rally in the wake of all of this news, leading some to suggest that downgrades by credit ratings companies are simply being shrugged off by investors. Is this the case, and how much attention should we be paying to these ratings?
Well, I don't think it really has been shrugged off. And I mean, initially we did see French bond yields climb higher, but I mean, to a certain extent, there had been reports ahead of the downgrade that really France, rather than Spain, is the elephant in the room of the Eurozone, and really the problem more so than other nations, because the economy isn't very healthy, and the government is very slow in implementing reforms, and some of the tax plans don't look as if they're going to do much for France's outlook in the medium term. So France's strategy of relying very much on trying to boost domestic demand has meant that it has fallen behind in competitiveness compared to Germany and some other areas. So, yeah, it may not have come that much of a surprise, but of course they are negative, and if you sort of look at the spread between Germany and France, it is already quite sizable, and French yields are above the UK as well. So these are all sort of issues France really can't be very happy with.
How likely then do you think a further S&P downgrade is?
I do think there is a 1 in 3 chance, probably even more. I mean, all countries, not only in the Eurozone but also the US, one of the big problems over the next years really will be how to get fiscal policies back on track, and how to reduce deficit without killing growth off totally and getting into some sort of vicious circle. And so far, France hasn't delivered a strategy that really is that convincing. And some of the tax policies, I mean, you can't really reduce deficit just by focusing on taxes, which Hollande seems to be doing to some extent. And he has been trying to sort of mitigate it, but there's some concessions for small and medium-sized enterprises. But still, it's a dangerous path to go. And in this situation, there has to be serious doubts about the sustainability of fiscal policy. So, and in this environment, of course, there always is a risk of downgrade. I think what we have to say goodbye to is the idea that any country really is absolutely safe and will never have any problems. So I think any country faces some sort of risk of a downgrade in this situation, and there are no real safe havens anymore.
With all of this in mind, is it surprising, therefore, that the French business confidence data released today has actually risen more than expected in the last quarter?
I think, it ties in with the better than expected IFO reading. It ties in with the ZEW. So I think we have seen a general stabilization to a certain extent, at least. But on the other hand, it is still at very, very weak levels. If you look at the PMIs yesterday, yes, they did improve in France, but they remain very much below the 50-point no change mark, so pointing to ongoing contraction across the board. Today's surveys showed negative readings, which means pessimists still outnumber the optimists. So there may be some stabilization there, which is to some extent helped by the ECB announcement, by a general improvement in sentiment. But I don't think it really is a sign that we do see, or a sign that we see a quick rebound. I think France, as the rest of the Eurozone, is going to remain weak for quite a while.
Hopes of an EU budget resolution have been smashed following Angela Merkel's comments this morning that positions remain too far apart. Forming part of the stalemate is France's defence of farm subsidies, championed by the country since the early days of the EU. It's now thought that leaders could remain deadlocked into the new year. How will this delay in a budget agreement impact France?
Well, I don't think the EU budget, or the EU fiscal plan rather, is going to have that much of a direct impact on France. But of course, what's for stake at France is the farm subsidies that will do something for, well, you know, I mean, to a certain extent, farm subsidies are a point where the EU really has to think hard about it, but they're also a sign that France is holding on to a structure, to subsidies for farmers that are really not appropriate in the 21st century, and that the focus should be elsewhere. So from that point of view, it's if the farm subsidies are scrapped eventually or cut, France will have to focus, or it will have to focus more on the reforms that are really needed. So to a certain extent, one could argue it could work as a boost to the reforms that are needed. But on the other hand, in the immediate term, of course, it will add to the social problems France has, because it is still a very farm-oriented country. So if there are problems there, it will get a problem. Also, it will be a problem also for Hollande to sort of sell that to the nation.
Natascha, thank you very much. EU leaders will now have the weekend to recuperate before a Euro meeting on Monday to reach a final resolution on Greece's bailout terms. That's all from me. Goodbye for now and have a great weekend.